Hello and welcome to Stuart Saturday Lives. This is Season 2, Episode 4. I hope all of you are doing well. And for those of us in the Northern Hemisphere, we are certainly enjoying springtime. It's been lovely for the past month. And for all my friends and loved ones in the Southern Hemisphere, keep warm. Thanks to my March guest, Dr. Daniel Jordan, for being so charming and enlightening as we chatted about Thomas Butler, the Earl of Ossory. This month's episode is a little later than usual because I wanted to coincide as closely as possible with the anniversary of a certain fellow. Yes, you can see behind me, there's a bust of the man in question. Indeed, this episode will be devoted to all things William Shakespeare, the Bard of Avon. There we are. Yes, a very special person, in my opinion. Down in Stratford-upon-Avon today, there is a big 461st birthday party celebrating the life of William Shakespeare. And I only found out about it on Wednesday, so that was a little bit of a bummer for me. But I'm sure many people have been enjoying the festivities there. It started at 11 a.m. today and ends at 4. So if you are in the Stratford-upon-Avon area, head on over to Henley Street and you should have an hour before they pack up. Next, I have some news. Historians Dr. Erica Canella, Mark Turnbull, and I have co-founded a brand new history festival in order to shine light on a period in time which doesn't get the appreciation we feel it deserves. Last week on social media, we announced the first ever Stuart History Festival. Yay! On the weekend of the 5th and 6th of July, 2025, we will be at the Old Palace in Worcester, adjacent to Worcester Cathedral. The venue looks amazing, and I'm really looking forward to it and being around other Stuart history lovers. We have been very pleasantly surprised by the outpouring of positive and supportive responses we've received. We would like to thank everyone who has been in touch offering to give their own talks. We really appreciate it. But sadly, our lineup has been finalized and will be made public shortly. But we really appreciate all the enthusiasm for it. Thank you so much. Now, it's time to turn to the subject of this episode. In April 1564, a baby son was born to John and Mary Shakespeare in this house on Henley Street. I took this photo back in 2022. It was a beautiful day. Queen Elizabeth I, who would be the last Tudor monarch, had been, by that time, Queen of England for some 6 years, having ascended the throne after her sister, Queen Mary I's death in 1558. When William was a lad of 6 in 1568, his dad, John Shakespeare, was elected bailiff of Stratford-upon-Avon. William went to school locally, and in 1582, an 18-year-old William Shakespeare married a pregnant 26-year-old Anne Hathaway, who was raised in this stunning cottage in Shottery near Stratford-upon-Avon. And there's my daughter in the front there. And as you can see, this is what I imagine many people think of when they think of Shakespeare's time. I mean, this is fantasy levels Tudor architecture, isn't it? And the gardeners who maintain the property here are just absolutely extraordinary. I'm always blown away by how beautiful the gardens are at the properties associated with Shakespeare. Now, the couple's eldest child, a daughter named Susanna, was born in 1583. And 2 years later, in 1585, she was followed by fraternal twin siblings, Hamnet and Judith. By 1592, Shakespeare was working in London, and the story has been that he was living there alone. However, just this week, I read a news article about how Shakespeare expert Matthew Stegall of the University of Bristol has found and analyzed a fragment of a letter, and this is addressed to good Mistress Shakespeare. And most of us have this belief that Shakespeare's wife Anne never visited London and stayed in Stratford upon Avon with their children. But this fragment may change all of that, and perhaps proves that Shakespeare in fact lived with his wife in London. We can't really say for certain yet, I don't think, but it is amazing that potentially even more information about Shakespeare's life is being unearthed. And if true, what we know about Shakespeare will be changed. So, a very exciting development for sure. William Shakespeare's poem, Venus and Adonis, was published in 1593, and this is believed to have been his first published work. This image is from the Bodleian. For those unacquainted with this tale, it's about the ancient Roman goddess of love and beauty, Venus, and you might know her by her Greek mythology name, Aphrodite. So it's about Venus and her love for the gorgeous but very much doomed Adonis, a hunter, a mortal, who is eventually slain by a wild boar, and his blood combined with her tears to form a flower. So it's quite an amazing poem. So if you haven't read that, I would suggest you do so, because it's great. In the next year, 1594, Shakespeare joined the Lord Chamberlain's Men, a playing company or troupe of actors. All actors at this time were men, as it was considered unseemly for women to be on the stage. Shakespeare was the dramatist for this troupe, but he also acted with them. A notable actor amongst them was Richard Burbage. And although Shakespeare's career at this point was going from strength to strength, soon the Shakespeare family would be hit by a tremendous blow. In 1596, William and Anne's son, Hamnet, died, aged only 11. By the way, I recommend the 2020 novel Hamnet by Maggie O'Farrell, which is a fictional account of Hamnet Shakespeare and the grief his parents suffered after his loss. In the following year, 1597, I think Shakespeare purchased New Place in order to try to turn a new leaf for his family's loss of Hamnet. You can see here the gardens behind New Place, and again, they're absolutely stunning. As with other images, I took this as well during my last visit to New Place in 2022. Now, the building in which Shakespeare lived is no longer in existence, but there is a modern building which has very interesting exhibitions and information. Yet, in my opinion, these gardens are easily the most attractive part of the site. In 1599, the Globe Theatre opened in Southwark, London. And while that was a big positive event in Shakespeare's life, his father John was suffering from ill health. Indeed, his health continued to deteriorate into the following year, 1601, when John Shakespeare died, leaving William, his eldest son, 2 properties, which included the family home on Henley Street. In 1602, wealthy Shakespeare purchased land in Old Stratford. When Elizabeth I died in March of 1603, this ushered in the time of Stuart Britain, because it was ruled over by the Stuarts under James VI of Scotland, who became James I of England. Of course, 1605 was the year of the gunpowder plot. And I was going to show you my mug, but I've left it downstairs. But I had this I have this mug that I bought, I think it was at Shakespeare's Globe, and it has that famous sort of lineup of the gunpowder plotters, and they've added Shakespeare in amongst them. Of course, he wasn't involved in the gunpowder plot, by the way, but it was just a bit of fun, and I'll post about it later. But it's a lovely mug, and it always makes me laugh a bit because of the whole thing. We often think of Shakespeare, but we don't remember that there were all these things going on simultaneously during his lifetime. In 1607, Susanna, his daughter, married Dr. John Hall, and the couple moved into Hall's Croft in Stratford-upon-Avon. I have yet to visit. I think they've been closed since 2020, so hopefully they can reopen sometime. And the couple lived there until after William's death 9 years later in 1616. It was in this same year that the English colony of Jamestown was founded in what is now Virginia. In the following year, 1608, Mary Shakespeare, his mother, died. But in the same year, Shakespeare's granddaughter, Elizabeth, who would become the last of his line, was born. And this is where she was buried. Elizabeth, who was a staunch royalist, would live through the English or British civil wars, the interregnum, the Restoration, and she died in 1670 and was buried in the Church of St. Peter and St. Paul, Abington, Northampton, which happened to be my family's regular church for many years. So there was this Shakespeare connection. And this is situated just across from Abington Hall, and it's in the area of Abington Park. It's interesting. If you look at my book, A Year in the Life of Stuart Britain, you'll be able to see an image that I took of it. So for those of you who already have that, that'll be in there, and there's some information as well. In 1609, Shakespeare's sonnets were published. Now, many people assume that since Shakespeare had dedicated his first two published poems to Henry Wriothesley, 3rd Earl of Southampton, that the sonnets were also dedicated to the same patron. However, according to the Folger Shakespeare Library and several other Shakespeare resources, the patron is unnamed and remains a mystery. Whatever the case may be, Shakespeare's financial situation was ever more comfortable, and he even purchased a property in London, in Blackfriars. The Globe, however, was destroyed by fire in 1613 during a performance of All Is True, and we know it better as Henry VIII. Researchers think that Shakespeare moved back to Stratford-upon-Avon permanently in around 1613, and he lived there for the next 3 years until his death on the 23rd of April, 1616. He was buried in Holy Trinity Church, also in Stratford-upon-Avon. And in this same year, his younger daughter, Judith, who had been one of the twins, delivered a son named Shakespeare, with her husband, Thomas Quiney, with whom she went on to have 2 further sons, and sadly, none of the children made it to adulthood. It was a tragic yet very common circumstance in the early modern period. Shakespeare's popularity did not wane in the years following his death. William Davenant, who was a well-known Restoration-era playwright and theatre manager, was Shakespeare's godson, and he wasn't averse to letting people think he was actually Shakespeare's illegitimate child. It's an interesting topic, and I would suggest people read Shakespeare's Other Son by R.E. Pritchard for more about that. The Shakespeare First Folio brought together for the first time 36 of William Shakespeare's plays, and this was in 1623. And some of you may recall the podcast episode I released a year or so ago about this first folio. Now, 1623 was towards the end of the reign of James VI and I. There were 3 subsequent editions in 1632, 1663, 1685. So Shakespeare was still known and published throughout the Stuart period. It was during the reign of Charles II that women were allowed to tread the boards, and the first actresses made their mark. Margaret Hughes is believed by some to have been the first actress performing the part of Desdemona in Shakespeare's Othello, staged by Thomas Killigrew. Right, well now, here we've got something special lined up. This is time for a cookery segment. Yay! Hello, thank you for joining me again. The last time you were here, we were working on... Oops, there's a lot of junk behind me. Hi there, welcome back to my kitchen. The last time you were here, we were working on the Christmas special, and I made a pigeon, and that was quite an interesting thing to do. Now today I've decided to make something that would have been much more of a regularly eaten dish, and this would be a pottage. As you can see, I've added all of the chopped vegetables, and I also added the oatmeal and the slices of ham, which I've chopped up. It's already starting to thicken up. I think perhaps I should have chopped it a little more into smaller pieces, but yeah, we'll see how it comes along. So this is the consistency of the pottage. I'm pretty happy with it. It's thickened very nicely, and though I was a bit concerned I hadn't chopped things finely enough, you could see it's fine. I did want to just roughly chop it, and I think this is pretty good. Everything looks fine, and I might add a bit of cream at this stage. Let's see. Sometimes I used milk, and if they had cream around, they might likely have put that in. Thing is, it was a dish that you could put anything in, anything you had around, and it's a wonderful way of using things that you had around. And the cream, of course, makes it even nicer. All right. Ooh, yeah. Very nice. Well then, I just got my bread out of the oven, so here it is. And I love lovely homemade bread. So we have our pottage and our homemade bread. Oh yeah, that came out very, very nicely. So here we have my attempt at a pottage with the homemade bread. All right then, shall we try it? Let's do it. Wow, that's very creamy, and it's thick, and well, it's surprisingly flavorsome. I make lots of soups, and my family's rather sick and tired of them, I'm afraid. But I tend to use all sorts of herbs and stock. I use chicken stock usually. This has no chicken stock, and yet it's quite flavorsome. Yes, the leeks combined with the onion, so it's quite an oniony sort of flavor, at least this one. I can't detect any of the bits of oatmeal. That's all sort of merged in with the rest of the vegetables. And wow, it's really quite nice. I'm surprised by that. I really like that. And I just have to see if the rest of my family will enjoy eating this. So we'll see. But definitely, I really like this, and I think I'll make it again sometime. So that's all from me for this episode. And if you have any kinds of recipes that you would like me to try from the early modern period, or hopefully the 17th century, I'd be more than happy to give that a try in the future. Thank you for stopping by my kitchen. Bye! Well, that did go well. I enjoyed it. And the great thing was that everyone in the family did eat it. My husband liked it too, because if some of you may recall that he didn't even try the pigeon during the Christmas special. But both of them, my husband and our daughter, ate it, the pottage, and they liked it. And they asked me to make it again sometime. The only disadvantage of it was that I had to soak my cooking pot for about 3 days because it was completely soaked. It was like encrusted at the bottom. So there's that. But it was fun and really tasty. I'm still surprised that it was so nice. And of course there are different ways of making pottage, and there were different sorts. So that was just one, and I'm sure other people have made others that were using mutton or whatnot. But yeah, fun. I love doing that. I think I'd like to do more of these cookery segments. Well, some people are of the opinion that William Shakespeare wasn't really the author of the work that is that is attributed to him, that it was really the work of someone else. The Shakespeare authorship question, as it is known, usually centers on the theory that Shakespeare was a sort of cover for a nobleman who wrote them all instead. Those who support this theory are often referred to as anti-Stratfordians, and they believe this. And the men who are often put forth or forward as the true authors of the works of William Shakespeare are usually Sir Francis Bacon, Edward de Vere, 17th Earl of Oxford, Christopher Marlowe, and William Stanley, 6th Earl of Derby. Now, I don't believe there is any credible evidence for this, because it all seems to stem from a rather unkind and elitist view that only a man who had been to university would have been able to produce the oeuvre that Shakespeare did, completely discounting the probability that he was simply a very talented individual. So that's just my 2 cents. But my love of Shakespeare began at a very early age. I think it was when I attended a scholastic book fair at my elementary or primary school in Philadelphia. It was at this fair, I remember it clearly, even now, that I came across the book Stories from Shakespeare by Marchette Chute. And this paperback that we show here was published in 1991. So I was about 5 or, going on 6. And I completely fell in love with those stories. I began to check the plays out from the local library, and by the age of 11, I was getting really immersed in his complete works. My parents got me this, and this is quite large. Wah. They got me this for my 13th birthday, and I have my little Z for my surname, but it's very, you could see it's been used quite a lot. So this is the Ardent Shakespeare, published in 1998, and it's very heavy. Certainly something you don't want to drop on your foot. And I absolutely adore this book. And be very careful, because the cover is going to fall off if I'm not careful. But inside we have that wonderful piece, the portrait of Shakespeare engraved, and that was on the 1623 publication of his works. And I love it. That book, this, it just means so much to me. It's very special to me. And it was at that age, around age 13, that I began to do acting. I really loved acting. And I played, you could see, I was Lady Macbeth in Macbeth. In the middle, I played Hermia in A Midsummer Night's Dream. I played Hero in Much Ado About Nothing, Juliet in Romeo and Juliet, and the Queen in Hamlet. I remember being really in love with this whole scene. And I mean, that's probably no surprise given what I do now. I try to merge both this sort of acting, and I do my voice acting as well. And so it's this love of Shakespeare, of drama from the early modern period, from the Jacobean period, and other dramatists, and of course, being immersed in the other plays and poems by his contemporaries, that led me into the study of the Stuart period. So while I was doing the acting, I was also studying history, and it is a very rich era with all sorts of wonderful art and literature just an incredibly rich period. And for me, I love seeing the widespread impact of Shakespeare's work. Personally, I'm not awfully keen on the modern interpretations, I have to admit. I prefer period costumes and a historical setting. For example, I'll always be the one who loves the 1968 Zeffirelli version of Romeo and Juliet, which you could see on the left, with Juliet played by the late, great Olivia Hussey, my favorite actress. And I'll always prefer this version over the 1996 Lerman version, with the guns and the drugs and all that, despite the latter being a sort of the version that was for my generation, the millennials. Um, so there is that. But Shakespeare's plays have inspired numerous artistic endeavors, from Sergei Prokofiev's gripping 20th century ballet of Romeo and Juliet to West Side Story by Jerome Robbins, Leonard Bernstein, and Stephen Sondheim. And who can forget the many memorable performances by Laurence Olivier in many a Shakespeare production? There he is as Hamlet. I really like Kenneth Branagh as well. I mean, I don't always agree with his casting choices, but I love how enthusiastic and passionate he has been about bringing Shakespeare to the silver screen. And I just wholly admire him for that. Yeah. But Shakespeare's work, it's important to remember, didn't just impact English-speaking audiences. Throughout the world, people have been inspired by him and his work. In Japan, famously, Akira Kurosawa's 1957 film, Throne of Blood, is a version of Macbeth. And of course, there was Italian composer Giuseppe Verdi, who wrote 2 operas, Falstaff and Otello, after characters by Shakespeare in his plays. Falstaff is memorably known as a character in The Merry Wives of Windsor and many other plays. He does pop in to other plays. Otello, of course, is Othello. But despite this, some say Shakespeare isn't inclusive enough, and recently there was some controversy when news broke that Shakespeare's Birthplace Trust had decided to decolonize their museum. Judging by the over 6,000 comments beneath this article, it seems the great majority of the general public are against this decision. I, for one, love visiting Shakespeare's hometown of Stratford-upon-Avon. It tends to recharge my batteries, and I would say it nurtures my soul. After the most difficult period in my life, when I was in the deepest pit of darkness and despair, following a bereavement, my husband took our family there, and it really helped me. It really did. Shakespeare, his work, got me through many bad times during adolescence and subsequently throughout my nearly 40 years of life. I really can't imagine how less rich my existence would be without his words. Yeah. And next we have a picture of my daughter. Now, she doesn't look like this now, so that's why I'm showing you. This is several years ago now. Here she was in the back garden of Shakespeare's birthplace, the Henley Street location. And as I mentioned earlier, the gardeners do an incredible job. I mean, there were hollyhocks and roses and an amazing array of beautiful flowers. And I remember this fondly because we were in a very, very bad place at the time. But I remember it was raining that day, and my little 5-year-old was walking around in her lovely Elizabethan princess dress. And the people on the streets were moving aside, and they were saying such lovely things as we walked along and made our way from the hotel. We were staying opposite New Place, so Shakespeare's New Place. And we were staying at a place called Indigo in this beautiful Tudor building. And as we made our way into the town center, it was so nice to see people not making fun of somebody in costume, but being genuinely lovely. And I'll remember that always, of how kind and just absolutely sweet people were. And the staff at Shakespeare's birthplace were so welcoming to us, especially my little daughter, and it was so nice, and it was a bright spot in an otherwise very difficult time for us. So if you can visit Stratford upon Avon and you love Shakespeare and history, you should have a lovely visit. The River Avon was, and probably still is, it's often busy with swans and boats. And I loved how there was this row of boats, and they all had names on them of different characters from Shakespeare's plays. And I thought that was so charming. It was just so lovely. And they are really, they're right next to a little market. And this market area lies just in front of the Royal Shakespeare Theatre. Now, the architecture throughout the town is beautiful. I mean, this is the police station, for goodness sake. I mean, really, the police station looks like this. I hope I won't get in trouble for showing the police station. But anyway, I just thought it was amazing. It's just incredible that this is how it is. I mean, if I could, I'd move there, but yeah. And there are decorations above doorways like this. And I love how every time you go anywhere around this town, there are these little nods to Shakespeare. So it is the perfect place. Well, it is the must see, the must visit for anyone who loves Shakespeare at all. Of course, as I mentioned earlier, there is the Royal Shakespeare Company based there. And I was thrilled to be able to finally visit the Royal Shakespeare Theatre there. That was something I had wanted to do since I was that 13-year-old girl reading this heavy complete works of Shakespeare book. So yes, Shakespeare is very, very dear to me. And it's no coincidence that my daughter is named Juliet. But I really could go on for the rest of the afternoon and talk about the various connections that I have to Shakespeare. But I just think that his work is so positive, and it makes things better. I do think so. And now I would like to take this opportunity to announce the first in our Sleep with the 17th Century Lady series, Shakespeare in the Garden. This series is part of our sleep range, which have been crafted to help you relax and hopefully fall asleep. Shakespeare in the Garden is as though you are in a garden with me. The birds are singing, the bees are buzzing by, all while I read 50 of Shakespeare's sonnets to you in a gentle voice. Let's have a brief listen to what you'll experience. I know the perfect spot. Come with me. We are passing beautiful parterres of intricately manicured yew hedging. There is a patch of lovely soft grass on a bank here, a mini wilderness, elevated just enough to afford us a charming pastoral view of the formal gardens, and beyond, fields dotted with sheep. I've spread the blanket, and you can have this cushion. That scent in the air is from the thyme and rosemary in the knot garden. Let's take a few breaths together. There. I'd like you to be as relaxed and comfortable as possible. I've brought a copy of William Shakespeare's sonnets, published in 1609. Let us begin. 1. From fairest creatures we desire increase, that thereby beauty's rose might never die, but as the riper should by time decease, his tender air might bear his memory. But thou, contracted to thine own bright eyes, feed'st thy light's flame with self-substantial fuel. Shakespeare in the Garden will be available soon to paid subscribers on my Patreon account. And soon I will have a new playlist on our YouTube channel, and it will be Cook with the 17th Century Lady. So that's going to be up soon as well. Let us part with the words of Ben Jonson, a contemporary of William Shakespeare's, of whom he wrote, "He was not of an age, but for all time." That's exactly how I feel. He is for all time. Yeah. Well, that's all from me for this episode. Do please consider joining me next month for our restoration special on the 10th of May, when my guest will be historian Justine Brown. It'll be all about what the restoration was, how it came about, and who the major historical figures were involved in it. I'm sure you'll enjoy it. Yeah. And until then, don't forget to keep it Stuart. Thank you, and have a lovely day.